Okay, welcome to part two of Lockheed Martin's UFO secrets. I'm Pedro, and let's get into it. They have secrets, and I think I know what they are. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about the second claim I made in episode number one, which is Lockheed Martin has at least one intact craft, not made by human hands, not from this world. Okay. So, if you haven't seen the first part one of this, please go watch it. It'll make part two make more sense. But if you have, let's keep going. We're going to start with Tom DeLonge and his book Secret Machines and the E.W. Davis notes. Um, Secret Machines is sold as a historical fiction, as you can see, a novel based on actual events. It is a production of To the Stars, which was called To the Stars of Academy of Arts and Science. And it's really good. It's fiction, but and I never read fiction, but I read this and I really enjoyed it. So if you want to read really good kind of sci-fi about the UFO phenomena, this is the book to read. Um, However, I'm more interested in the introduction to the book, which is nonfiction. And at the time Tom DeLonge wrote this, at the time it was published in 2016, everyone thought either he was lying or he was crazy. Okay. And it turned out he wasn't lying and he wasn't crazy. So we're going to compare the narrative in the introduction of Secret Machines with the introduction being nonfiction, right? The nonfiction introduction to this fictional work and the E.W. Davis notes, which we talked about in the first part of the series. If you compare Tom Wilson and Tom DeLonge's, the two Toms, right? So Admiral Tom Wilson, who became the head of the DIA, and Tom DeLonge, the lead singer of Blink 182, they both talk about going to a contractor, aerospace contractor. Neither of them in these accounts names the contractor. Okay. Um, but Tom DeLonge, he talks about going through four layers of security, electronic code entry systems, hallways with speakers, with white noise. Um, Tom Wilson, Admiral Wilson, talks about going into a secure vault. This is almost certainly what's called a SCIF, a secured compartmentalized information facility. It's where you can keep tell secrets, essentially. And so they both go through these crazy security measures at a contractor, at an aerospace contractor. And they both meet before a tribunal, right? In Tom Wilson's case, he talks about a security director, a program director, and a corporate attorney. In Tom DeLonge's case, he talks about two top engineering executives and another executive who had researched me. And in both cases, there's a UFO inquiry, right? In Tom Wilson's case, he finds out that, look, it's a reverse engineering program and they have technology not from this earth. And in Tom's case, they say, oh, there's no such things as UFOs, but he ends up kind of making his case that, look, Stephen Greer and J. Edgar Mitchell are telling the world that you have this, and the people believe them, and they don't believe you, and they all want to work for SpaceX. Um, and the pitch was that, look, let me create kind of this historical fiction, right, with real information about UFOs in order to inure the public, especially the younger generation. Because remember, Tom DeLonge is the lead singer for Blink 182, one of the biggest rock bands in the world. And so definitely he has a voice for people, Gen Y, Gen Z. And that's what happened, right? And they liked the idea. And so you had these books, Secret Machines, and then you had nonfiction books as well, which are really good, a series called God's Man in War. But the point is, Tom DeLonge and Tom Wilson, they have this experience at a specific aerospace contractor that is very parallel. These two stories converge. Um, and keep in mind that Secret Machines was published in 2016, and the Eric Davis notes weren't leaked until 2019. Okay. Now, everyone thought Tom DeLonge was crazy until WikiLeaks happened, right? When had the whole Clinton email scandal and released all of, Hillary Clinton's emails during the 2016 election, everyone gave Tom DeLonge a second look. Um, Basically, if you look at this email in front of you, what it is, it's a date, an appointment set for a Google Meetup, okay, between Tom DeLonge, John Podesta, which is Barack Obama's advisor at that time and Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, right? General Neil McCaslin of the U.S. Air Force, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Foreign Technology Division. This is the same Air Force base that the Roswell wreckage was taken to in 1947, okay? You have Major General Kerry, and you have a Clinton aide named Malia Fisher. Because remember, at this time, everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president. Okay. So it seems like she was kind of being prepared to be the slow drip disclosure president, right? Otherwise, why have Malia Fisher there, right? And then you have Bob Weiss, who at that time was the vice president of Lockheed Martin. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, you have Tom DeLonge, John Podesta, General McCaslin, Major General Kerry, Clinton aide, and the vice president of Lockheed Martin talking about Tom DeLonge's project for a slow drip disclosure. And by the way, the major narrative of TTSA is that the aliens are bad and the deep state is good, right? So the CIA and the military industrial complex, they're the good guys protecting us from the aliens, and then the aliens are bad, right? Whether that's true or not, I'm going to let you decide. But that's the main narrative, right? And so this was what was going on. He went to Lockheed Martin. So Tom DeLonge goes to Lockheed Martin, and Tom Wilson goes to a aerospace contractor, and they have the exact same experience. So my question is, did Tom Wilson go to Lockheed Martin as well? If we continue to David Grush in 2023, where he testified before Congress, what do we have there? David Grush was in the NRO. He was very high ranking. He had all these security clearances, and he was the NRO representative on the UAP task force. His job in the UAP task force was to find that reverse engineering alien technology program, and he did. And let's see what he has to say about Lockheed Martin and OSAP during the Joe Rogan experience. Let's go.
I wanted to understand, like, what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he, give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access, and then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP, and I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? I was already talking to these amazing high-level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and, he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it?
He said,
witness?
In terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term. And he actually told me on behalf of me, he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time. And he straight up said to me he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue. Literally. And then what he was telling me about OSAP, I was like, holy shit, I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. So the real history, what fucking OSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, They went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs. And bigoted means it's like by name. And it's like, it was like, you can read the FOIA document. It was like, Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, et cetera. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me, so I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this. We knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the OSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to DOPSR, got this cleared, so don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was if they made a catcher's mitt, a security catcher's mitt for this shit, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material. And it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff. And it was like bits and pieces of like hall structure, shit like that. And so they were going to tech transfer it. And the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides. I saw the paperwork. Like there's a paperwork trail I've seen on this shit. And I talked to the people involved in this program. And, even Jim Lakatsky, who ran the program, who's a retired DIA officer, PhD in engineering, even made this disclosure in his book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, page 152 to 153. And he also made a disclosure a couple weeks ago, I think it was on Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, where he's like, yeah, we had a whole craft and we broke into the hall and we gained access. And he ran that through the.
So there's David Grush on Rogan. Let's go back to what we were saying. Okay, notice David Grush talked about several things. He talked about broken off pieces of a UFO and craft, right? Broken off pieces of a UFO and a craft. Okay, that deals with the broken off pieces deals with my next video, part 3. But today we're focusing on the craft. Okay, and it's Lockheed Martin. And yes, there is credible substantiation for this claim. If you go back to the latest UFO hearings from 2004. November 2004, with Admiral Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, Schellenberger, the reporter, and Mr. Golds from NASA. And then you go to the House of Representatives Committee repository for the website for that specific meeting, which was called Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Exposing the Truth. And you go to supporting documents, okay, one provided by Congressman Tim Burchett, the Honorable Tim Burchett from the great state of Tennessee. Okay, he shared a very important PDF, and it says that UAP material. Okay, now these highlights are not mine. Okay, you can download it and read it for yourself. In this document, it says, in the supporting document, it says UAP material divestment plan proposed to OSAP leadership by Lockheed Martin Space Systems Vice President Dr. James Ryder, now deceased. Okay, so if you go to my first video, you can hear Dr. Jim Ryder talk about UFOs and see what he thinks about UFOs. It's really fascinating. A specific facility known to me was described as having crash retrieval material from the 1950s and other historical operations. They proposed a technology transfer agreement into a posed wave special access program Senator Reid was championing. Okay. So Jim Ryder from our first video, okay, he was the guy, the VP of Lockheed, trying to do this tech transfer for Bigelow Aerospace. And if you go to the Wilson Davis documents, which were leaked in 2019 from the papers of the late, great J. Edgar Mitchell, um, Tom Wilson says, the program manager said they didn't know where it was from. It was technology that was not of this world, not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. And if you look above, it says an intact craft they believed could fly. Okay. So you have in the Wilson Davis, an intact craft they believe can fly, not made by man, not by human hands. And you do have the Lockheed Martin company with their own craft, not made by human hands, not from this earth. If you go to Jacques Vallée's journals, for 2003, a 2003 journal entry. And keep in mind, the Wilson Davis notes were written in 2002. Okay, so they were written in 2002 and they were leaked in 2019. And a year later, Jacques Vallée has this in his journal entry. And in this journal entry, they were talking about the Wilson Davis notes. And he says, Colonel Blackburn, too, is an enigma. He once told me that he'd seen a piece of UFO metal that looked like a wing section. Those who worked on the project were doing so under extreme hardship conditions because of the time distortion induced by the craft. Okay, so one more time. Colonel Blackburn from our first video, again, Lieutenant Colonel Blackburn, Ron Blackburn of the United States Air Force. He served in the Air Force for 20 years, and then when he retired, he went straight into Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And he says that there's UFO metal, pieces of UFO metal, okay, and there's an intact craft, just like David Grush, okay, talking about Lockheed having pieces of UFO metal and an intact craft. But Blackburn, aside from having seen a piece of UFO metal, he talks about how the people working on the craft have to deal with time distortion effects. Now, that's very interesting because that has everything to do with how these things probably fly. If you go to the Lakatsky book, Initial Revelations, he talks about, he doesn't say the contractor and he doesn't say the senator, but we know it's Lockheed, we know it's Harry Reid. Um, how the United States was in possession of a craft of unknown origin and had successfully gained access to its interior. This craft had a streamlined configuration suitable for aerodynamic flight, but no intakes, exhaust, wings, or control surfaces. In fact, it appeared not to have an engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. Okay, so the Lockheed craft doesn't have intakes, an exhaust, wings, or any other control surfaces, but it's aerodynamic. Okay. So it's not flying by displacing air the way a propeller plane or a helicopter would or a jet engine would. Okay. It doesn't have an engine at all or fuel tanks or fuel. So it's not a rocket. Okay. And if we go back to this quote by Blackburn, about the people working on the craft having to deal with the hardship of time distortions, it makes sense that OSAP produced these two dirts. In the Lakatsky book, after this paragraph, they tell you to read these two dirts. One of them is negative mass propulsion, and the other one is called advanced space propulsion based on vacuum engineering. In other words, engineering the space-time metric. Okay. And you could read these for yourself from DIA FOIA, but this seems to be the leading theory on how they work. Because if you read the space-time metric engineering defense intelligence reference document, it makes reference to time alteration, okay, and the change in the flow of time inside and immediately around the craft, okay. So these are the two leading theories of how they fly, and this DIRD talks about the time distortion effects mentioned by Blackburn back in 2003 in conversation with Jacques Vallée. So that's very interesting. Now, they got inside the craft. David Grush doesn't say how, Lakatsky doesn't say how, but there are clues from the historical record. These, what you see here are the Kona Blue slides. These were kind of like the sales pitch to the CIA, to the Air Force for the tech transfer from Lockheed Martin to Bigelow Aerospace. As you can see, it talks about an unacknowledged wave prospective special access program. So this is the sales pitch. When OSAP received, if OSAP had received the craft from Lockheed, its name would have been Kona Blue or some other, new name. But this prospective unacknowledged wave special access program was called Kona Blue. And it was a top secret document at one time, but now you can read it without going to jail. And if you look at the different compartments of this program, the Consciousness Center is very interesting, right? It talks about remote viewing and remote communication. That's DoD talk for clairvoyance and telepathy. But of note is study consciousness interactions with and control of technology. What technology? The Lockheed craft. Okay. So the Lockheed craft interacts with consciousness, and consciousness can control it. And then there was going to be a medical center which would have studied the physiological and psychological effects of interaction with vehicles and anomalous phenomenon. What vehicles? Again, the Lockheed craft. So that's very interesting. If you look at Diana Pasulka, who's a professor of religion and philosophy at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, she wrote a book that was published by Oxford University Press called American Cosmic. It is about UFO belief within the aerospace community in NASA and that sort of thing. And again, she's a scholar of religion. Okay. She uses secular methodology. Okay. She studies religion the way an anthropologist would study ceramics. Okay. And she talks about in American Cosmic how she was approached by a NASA space scientist named Tim Taylor, and he wanted to learn from her. And she says, what do I have to teach you? You're a aerospace NASA guy. I'm a humanities person, right? You religious studies. What do I, as a scholar of Catholic history, have to offer to you who are an engineer? And he said the following: I have mentors in the space program. One of them, who is now retired, explained that the next discovery in my field is going to come from your field. I am at the limit of understanding what I can from a materialist perspective. My mentor explained that mysticism, religion, and consciousness is where I need to go to learn what's next, that the mind machine interface is the next frontier. Okay, so we're not talking about Neuralink here. We're talking about something much more magical. And that's a term that Jim Ryder used in our first video during his talk at Lucis Trust. So that's it for today. Stay tuned for my next video, which will be part 3. Until then, God is good. We are all one. Peace and party on.